Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, I did a little bit of listening around the league. And those Alex Bregman rumors, well, they sound pretty darn real for the Philadelphia Phillies. We'll break it all down.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk radio space over on 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons of Phillies baseball, and this is my 3rd season as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Oh, and how could I forget? Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're consuming this in podcast form. Leave that 5-star rating if you don't mind. And then if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube yet, please do that. It costs you no money. It takes like 2 seconds. Just hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on the YouTube, and it gets you new notifications when episodes are posted, and it really, really helps me out. So if you'll remember, right, yesterday we talked about Alec Bohm being shopped by the Philadelphia Phillies and what could be the potential solutions. And we talked about, well, Aiden Miller and is he maybe ready? We talked about, could they be trading him for somebody? Could it be that you move him for like another like more ready prospect or a veteran guy that steps in? We talked about an interesting veteran name, Alex Bregman, who's going to be a free agent this year. Is this a move Alec Bohm to clear space to sign Bregman, trade Bohm, get something for him, and then replace him with Bregman and then call up Aiden Miller in the future? There are a whole bunch of different options we don't really know. So luckily, and this is going to turn into a hashtag podcast hosts with sources type of conversation, but here's the one thing I'll never say to you. I'm never going to guarantee something's going to happen. I'm never going to tell you. Someone told me this is happening. Like, I'm not going to be somebody who's breaking news over a guy like Jeff Passan or Bob Nightingale, even though Bob gets stuff wrong sometimes. Bottom line is, I'm not an insider, right? I'm not getting all of these scoops before anybody else hears about them. But I do know a little bit about, well, I know people who know what's going on inside the league and that have strong connections inside the league and know what the rumors flying are, if they are legitimate or not. And I had someone let me know today that this whole Phillies interest in Alex Bregman to replace Alec Bohm type of conversation, there are legs to it. The Phillies' interest in Alex Bregman, that's going to be hard to do, man. The Phillies' interest in Alex, we'll just go last name. They both start with a B. Are they trading for the same exact player? The Phillies' interest in Bregman is well known throughout the league, it sounds like, and their interest in shopping Bohm is also well known throughout the league. Now, it sounds like that the Philadelphia Phillies' main issue with Bohm is the attitude problems, right? That they look at it and they say, man, there are some people around the organization that have looked at him and said the way he reacts to stuff over the course of a game just hasn't really been professional enough, especially for a team that's competing for a World Series. On the other hand, when you look at Bregman, you look at a guy who, for all you think about the Astros cheating scandal, and trust me, I do not like that team because of that. But like, he has been as far as reacting to stuff, playing the actual game, a consummate professional in his time in Houston with a very talented baseball team that won at the highest level. So basically what you'd be doing is bringing in veteran Bregman to replace younger Bohm. Bregman, mind you, is only 30, so it's not like the team's getting significantly older. Bohm is 28. Bregman is 30. It feels like he's been around a lot longer because he's been in the majors making impactful swings for a while, but there's not that much age difference between the two. Here's the one stand-up, or like the one hold-up, I would say. You have Aiden Miller, who seems to slot in at third base, right? I do not think the Philadelphia Phillies want to trade him. I think they want him to play third base for this team in the future. That seems to be the plan for Aiden Miller from everything that I've heard from the organization, right? This guy's a great prospect. He's our guy. We want him to play up here at the major league level. Now, could he play another infield position? I mean, I guess potentially, but Trey Turner's locked down for a while, and Bryce Harper at first is locked down for a while, and Bryson Stott is a Gold Glove caliber defender at second. Now, I don't know. Maybe you can finagle things when Miller is ready, but I don't think Miller is ready. That seems like the long shot option here, which is why the Bregman rumor I want to check in on. And it sounds like it legitimately has some legs, that the Phillies are definitely interested in Alex Bregman. So what this all breaks down to is the question of how much is Bregman going to get paid, right? He is a guy that is carrying with him the weight of multiple World Series, and he didn't win them by himself, but he was on teams that won them, and he was productive, and he was not as productive as Alec Bohm last year. He wasn't. He didn't hit as well with runners in scoring position. He didn't hit as well in the clutch. He didn't have as productive of a season, but that doesn't mean he's a necessarily like significantly worse baseball player. And would you trade a lesser regular season for a better postseason? That seems to be what the Phillies are gambling on. But if I was Alex Bregman and I was 30, and I think I probably have one more big free agency contract coming up, wouldn't you want to sign a multi-year deal somewhere where you could get comfortable for the next 4, 5, 6 years? He's capable of signing a deal like that with teams. He is that good of a player. He is deserving of that. So you've got to ask yourself, if you're Alex Bregman, why would you come to Philadelphia if you believe that there's going to be a young player in Aiden Miller that takes your spot in 2 years? And if you're the Phillies, why would you sign Bregman to a long-term deal if you know that Aiden Miller is going to be ready in the next 2 years? It just doesn't seem to match up from the time frame perspective, unless Dave Dombrowski somehow hypnotizes this guy into signing like a 1-year deal with a club option and allows him to build up his value by playing in the middle of a lineup with Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and JT Realmuto and Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos, and say, okay, we're going to build your value so much higher than it is right now after a year with the Astros where you didn't have your best year, and then we'll get you paid, or you will get paid by somebody else at the end of that season. We'll call up Aiden Miller, we'll shake hands, and hopefully do so with a World Series ring here at Philadelphia. Maybe that works. I don't know. But the other thing that doesn't really seem to work is the dollar amount. Here's where this whole strategy also doesn't make sense to me, right? Not just the time frame with the Aiden Miller thing. And you could work that out. Like, listen, if you win, who cares what the contract length is? And you could always trade him in the future and stuff like that, talking about Alex Bregman, not Aiden Miller. So you could find a way to make that work, I suppose. But comparing Bohm to Bregman, dollar amount is also a big thing. We talked about it. Bohm's set to make like $8 million next year in arbitration. Bregman's going to make a heck of a lot more than that. And you have weaknesses in the outfield, basically across the outfield. I like Nick Castellanos, but still, the outfield, we know how much of a mess it was last year. And Alec Bohm in the infield was an all-star starter. So you're telling me you're going to move an all-star starter that's arbitration eligible. You're going to trade him because you don't like his attitude. Then you're going to bring in a more expensive option at third base, also an older one. And then after upping your payroll that way with an already tight payroll and losing 2 big-time relievers, mind you, we're going to do an evaluation of Carlos Estevez' 2024 season, or the post-deadline stint of it. We're also going to talk about Bryce Harper, a new award in his trophy case. But losing Estevez, losing Hoffman in free agency, or at least having to go re-sign them. Nobody has signed them yet. That's going to make things significantly more expensive. Where do you find the money to pay for somebody to play outfield? Or do you just roll back Brandon Marsh and Yohan Rojas and Nick Castellanos, and your infield is super powered and your outfield is mid again, and then you just kind of live with that? It doesn't seem to be the smartest strategy. I would rather them keep the 28-year-old, $8 million all-star starting third baseman and deal with the attitude and go out, and I'd rather them trade Marsh or trade Rojas and bring a significant upgrade in the outfield and spend your money that way. That seems to be smarter to me. But if the Phillies really think that Alec Bohm and his attitude has been such a problem, they want to shake things up and they think that that'll help, and maybe they're over the daycare dynamic. This is me pontificating. I don't know any of this stuff is real, right? I know the interest in Bregman is real. But the reasons are still murky for moving on from Alec Bohm. It seems attitude related, but there are more factors at play. But maybe they want to break up the daycare dynamic. Maybe they think it's time to move past that. Maybe it's time to become a more focused team on, I don't know. I love the daycare, and I love the way they mess around, and I love the way they keep the locker room light, and I think that's an important part of this team. But maybe the Phillies don't see it that way. Whatever the case may be, they're absolutely interested in acquiring the services of Alex Bregman. If they were to do that, it would mean that they have traded Alec Bohm. If they do that, it means the team gets older and more expensive at the third baseman position, but they get a guy that is a certified winner and has been in his major league career. So this is real, folks. This could very legitimately happen. If you have Alec Bohm jerseys, you better start praying to whatever God you believe in now, because there's a chance, a significant chance, that he has played his last game as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. And that is not something that I believe we were going to be saying in the season after he became an all-star starter at third base. Wild how fast things change in the sport of baseball and here in Philadelphia. Coming up next, we're going to evaluate Carlos Estevez's 2024 season. Now, he only spent part of it here, so it'll be a tighter evaluation, but this is going to be an important one because, well, you might have to throw money at him if Jeff Hoffman gets signed elsewhere, or you might just want to let him walk depending on how we evaluate how he did as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. So we'll talk about that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, though, let me tell you about my friends over at SelectQuote, because they do an absolutely amazing job, SelectQuote does, at making sure everything is in line in your life when it comes to insurance, basically. So the World Series, right? We know about it. The Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future, right? You want teamwork? Well, you need a great teammate, and SelectQuote is that for you. Their licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find out over $700 billion in coverage. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less. Doesn't sound good. If it's going to cost me more, it better cover me more. Well, SelectQuote's licensed insurance agencies work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Heck, they might find you one that costs you less and covers you more. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. Well, SelectQuote is going to help you pay that off by getting you exclusive policies that can reward that effort. So get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Let's evaluate Carlos Estevez and his 2024 season, or rather his 2024 Philadelphia Phillies season. This is going to be fun because I'm going to have to split up his baseball reference page into Phillies time and Angels time. Now, if you remember, the 31-year-old was acquired by the Philadelphia Phillies from the Los Angeles Angels at the trade deadline. And it was a big-time move. It was their most impactful move that they made. Now, I believed that Austin Hayes, who they acquired from the Orioles to play left field, could have been more impactful if his kidney didn't become infected, if his hamstring didn't explode. But in practice, in actuality, Carlos Estevez was the biggest trade deadline acquisition of the year for the Philadelphia Phillies. And I thought he was a great acquisition. I really did. I know how the postseason worked. The bullpen had some weird major collapse in the worst possible spot. And I know stuff like that just keeps happening to the Philadelphia Phillies. But I don't put that on Estevez, and I certainly don't put the grand slam against Francisco Lindor on Estevez fully. I looked at that as a tough spot. I looked at it as coming in with the bases loaded the day after you had already thrown against that team, or maybe it was 2 days after. Bottom line is it was a tough spot for him, and none of the bullpen was good. And whenever you come out of the pen with the bases loaded, I mean, your starter or the reliever before you didn't do the best possible job. And people might want to blame Ranger Suarez for that, but I mean, you're looking at a situation where was it Suarez that loaded the bases? Probably was because he loaded it a bunch of times. Bottom line is I don't put that on Estevez. I think he was great for the Philadelphia Phillies. His numbers in total for 2024. This is basically the guy you were projecting out to acquire, right? And then we'll do the numbers for the Phillies, which is what you actually got. But he finished with a 2.1 WAR, which is solid for a reliever, a 2.45 ERA in 2024. He had a total of 26 saves in 55 innings pitched. And, I mean, the guy was pretty darn good. His whip, let me just scroll all the way over here to it, was .909 for the season in 2024. Now, you're going to see that's the biggest spot where he was different with the Philadelphia Phillies than he was with the Angels. So it was just a little bit tougher of a spot for him to keep guys off base, and that's hits and walks were not as good with the Phillies. Let's look at the numbers then, right? Because I gave you the ones for the whole 2024. You were expecting like a 2.45 ERA guy. You got a 2.57 ERA guy. That was his final numbers with Philadelphia through 21 innings. Now, he threw 34 in LA, 21 in Philly. So not a totally even split, but not like completely small sample size compared to what he did in Los Angeles. That's a good sign that you got the ERA about on par with what you were expecting. That's normally a sign that you got good usage. You got 6 saves out of him, which for a team that hasn't had a closer for what feels like 6 years, pretty solid to see what he was able to do there. Better than Craig Kimbrell. We will take it. As far as strikeouts are concerned, he had 32 in LA. He had 18 in Philly. So the strikeout stuff wasn't quite as good here in Philadelphia, but part of that's to be expected as he was adjusting to a new bullpen and a new stadium and everything like that. I mean, it might not seem like it makes too big of a difference, but I would expect the numbers to take a slight dip first and then come back up after being acquired by another team. Estevez wasn't bad, though. Like, sure, he had a .735 whip in LA. That was the biggest difference. That changed to a 1.19 when he came here to Philly. But a 1.19 whip, that's not bad at all, folks. That is not bad at all. He allowed 2 home runs in Philadelphia as opposed to 3 in LA, but stadiums, you got to look at it. Citizens Bank Park, I mean, it's tougher to pitch here for sure than it is to pitch out there in LA. It's a bigger stadium. He had 7 walks in less innings than he had 5 walks in LA. So the walks were definitely an issue. He lost a little bit of control at points, and he gave up 18 hits as opposed to 20 hits. So giving up 18 in 21 innings as opposed to 20 and 34 innings. He didn't quite have like as good of stuff as he had with the Angels, but he wasn't bad. Like basically I go through all of those numbers to tell you this. Carlos Estevez was worth acquiring for the Philadelphia Phillies. He was good for the bullpen. I know he wasn't great in the postseason. Nobody in that bullpen was. I don't understand how it happened, but hell, that's just baseball sometimes. It sucks, but I'm not going to say, well, he wasn't good in the postseason, so maybe he doesn't have the capability to pitch in the postseason. No. And here's why I'll refute that. Because what we heard about Carlos Estevez near the end of the year, you started to hear it on TV broadcasts. I heard it from people that I talked to around the organization and people that covered the team. He became the real leader of that bullpen. And you think about leadership in the clubhouse and you say, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto. Great. You think about leadership in the rotation, you say, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola. Great. But you look at the bullpen and you say, who's the leader out there? Jose Alvarado is a good pitcher, but he's not like a veteran, true leader guy. Jeff Hoffman and Matt Strahm, who were your best 2 relievers this past year, were both guys that kind of were just recently acquired. Jose Ruiz is not a guy that's ever been in a leadership role for any team. He's kind of a fringe guy. Tanner Banks is not a guy that's been in like a leadership role for any team. I mean, you just look around the bullpen, and even when Sir Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto were here, none of those guys were like the veteran, hey, I'm going to tell you how this is supposed to be done, boys, type of guy. And it sounds like Carlos Estevez, I almost said Carlos Alcaraz. I don't know why. I'm thinking tennis. Carlos Estevez filled that role for the Philadelphia Phillies, a role that we didn't realize that they had a deficiency at. Great leadership is important in any part of baseball, especially when you have what's going on with what the Phillies were doing this year and fighting for a division title and a top seed in the National League and going on a postseason run. So that's why I don't think it was like the moment's too big for him, because he was the veteran that took over the presence in the locker, or not the locker room, but the bullpen that really helped this Philadelphia Phillies. Relievers, core, closed down the season. The bullpen was solid all year, and I think Estevez was a big part of steadying that. So do you bring him back? Do you pay him the crazy amount of money? Honestly, if I'm going to pay someone between Jeff Hoffman and Carlos Estevez, it's probably going to be Carlos Estevez, mainly because of the reports that people are looking to pay Jeff Hoffman starter money. If some team pays him to be a starter and tries to flip him over into a starting role because they think he can be that good, you're not going to bring him back. You're not going to pay him starter money to be in the bullpen. Doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't be good for him. If he wants to try and be a starter, he doesn't have that opportunity here in Philadelphia. Estevez, meanwhile, he's a reliever. He's the more likely of the two to come back the second those reports came out. And he's probably worth the money. You need one of those high-end guys. And if he was the closer, you'd feel a lot better going into the season knowing, hey, we have this guy to lock stuff down. So that's how I feel about the contract situation. I would re-sign Estevez. I would probably not re-sign Hoffman. We'll break down Hoffman's 2024 soon enough. And I'll show you the respect that I have for Jeff Hoffman. He's one of my favorite players currently, from this last year's team. But Estevez seems to make more sense. So how do you evaluate him? What do you rate him? Compared to expectations, I'm probably going to give him a B+ for the Philadelphia Phillies. I expected him to be a little bit better, and the postseason will have to weigh in there. But he was above what you should expect. He was above average for acquiring a trade deadline reliever, so that's good for him. And compared to his peers, I'm going to give him an A. He had a really darn good season overall, and I'm not going to take that away from him just because he gave up a grand slam in the NLDS. No, I'm going to look at the full body of his work here in Philadelphia. And if I'm comparing him to his peers, that has to be an even higher grade. So it's an A for Carlos Estevez against other relievers in baseball. It's a B+ compared to what you thought you were getting. Above average, but not necessarily exceptional. And you'll take that. And that's why if he's back on the team next year, we should all be very happy about it. Coming up, we're going to do one of my favorite things in this final segment. We're going to brag about Bryce Harper. And we're going to talk about the latest addition to his trophy case as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You know what's happening tomorrow night? Well, it's Wednesday, so that means Thursday Night Football. Who's playing there this week? Oh, the Eagles and the Commanders, a huge game with a lot of great opportunity. Don't you want to throw some scratch on that? Of course you do. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet with FanDuel. Go ahead and check it out. I mean, the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And it's not just live bets. Maybe today you think the Eagles are going to cover the 3.5 versus the Commanders. Home, short week, Washington a little banged up. Go ahead and throw that money. Do it. FanDuel's got a lot of ways for you to win. You'll get started, once again, I want to remind you, with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Bryce Harper has added to the trophy case. Remember, we told you there were a couple players up for Silver Slugger in the National League, and the only Philly who ended up winning it was Bryce Harper, who I told you is the most likely to have won that award. Bryce Harper is the Silver Slugger winner for National League first baseman, and he is much better than anyone could have ever even imagined he would have been in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform. So switch positions multiple times. To come here as a right fielder, and then as a DH, and then as a first baseman, and do all this stuff and be amazing all the way through it and win awards and put together these types of seasons. I mean, you're not going to win an MVP every single time, but to have this ability to just be you could play him at basically any position and he's going to win a Silver Slugger because he's just going to be the best hitter regardless of position he plays. There are some guys that I'll tell you, second base is a prime example. Second baseman, there will be some guys that win Silver Sluggers over the course of their career because second baseman just isn't that much of an offensive setup position. Catcher is another one of those positions. Not that JT Realmuto was a catcher merchant when it comes to Silver Slugger awards, but you get what I'm saying. To win it in the outfield, to win it at first base, and to win it at DH, the three positions where Bryce Harper has won Silver Slugger in his career, is unbelievable. That's so darn good. In fact, it's so rare to see somebody do that at three different positions. Only three other guys in the history of baseball have won a Silver Slugger at 3 different positions. And I mean, 2 of them are recent big time names. Now I'll tell you the one that's not the more recent name. Al Oliver did it playing first base, designated hitter, and outfield, the same 3 positions as Bryce Harper. The other 2 names on this list, Albert Pujols, who did it at first base, third base, and outfield, and Miguel Cabrera, who did it at first base, third base, and outfield. So Cabrera, Pujols, Al Oliver, the only other guys to ever win a Silver Slugger at 3 different awards. And now you can put Bryce Harper's name on this list. This is really cool, right? Because when Bryce Harper first came to Philadelphia, by the way, it's his 4th career Silver Slugger award. I forget if I mentioned that already, but that's darn impressive. And it also shows you he doesn't get one every year. So when he runs into these seasons where he wins a Silver Slugger, it's not like, oh, okay, well, he's Bryce Harper. He's probably done this 8 times in his career. No, it deserves celebrating. It certainly does that he won this award. And I'm not saying, oh, it's better than the World Series. No, it still sucks they got knocked out. But if you don't think I'm going to celebrate guys winning awards, like, you're crazy. I like to root for this team. I like to root for these players. I like to see them have success. It raises the profile of the players, the profile of the team. All this stuff does matter. Adds to the recruitment process for guys like Bregman. Hey, you want to come play with a Silver Slugger like Bryce Harper? Great. But anyway, I digress. When you look at what Bryce Harper has been able to do, though, like it's insanely impressive. And Silver Slugger awards at different positions, you saw the company. We're at the point in Bryce Harper's career where, like, when he first came here, you got to see, oh, this guy's really good. Oh, this guy's going to win an MVP. This guy is recruiting players to this team to build back up Phillies baseball. But now Bryce Harper is not the, oh, what can he be guy anymore. We know what he is. There's no secret in Philadelphia how good of a baseball player this guy is, how good of a recruiter this guy is, how much he cares about the city, how much he cares about this organization. All the stuff that he does day in and day out to try and win a World Series for the Philadelphia Phillies is undeniable. But what's really cool about this stuff is that we're starting to see the part of Bryce Harper's career where he's just not setting personal milestones. Home run number 100, home run number 200. No, we're not just seeing him do individual stuff. We're starting to see him put up accolades that are compared to some all-time greats. You know how, like, Mike Trout at the start of his career, like, it happens to all these great athletes with longevity. You see them first burst onto the scene. You say, okay, how good can they be? And then you start seeing him hit milestones earlier than most people hit them. You say, wow, he did that in that many games. He did that in that many seasons. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, this guy's undeniably great. And then you get to the next step, which is where Bryce Harper is heading right now. Oh my God, he's the only guy to do that since who? He's the second guy or third guy or fourth guy to do that. And the list is all bona fide Hall of Famers. Like, that's where Bryce Harper is. And that's what's so cool when you start doing things that nobody besides the all-time greats have done. And that's the area that Bryce Harper is starting to enter. And it's going to be really cool to see those numbers compile over his time in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform. Now, the only number that a lot of people care about is championships, right? How many championships can he compile? And he wants to win one too. Individual accolades, I'm sure he would trade all of those right now for a Philadelphia Phillies World Series. He wants to win that badly. I believe him when he says that. But part of wanting to win that badly is not trying to do too much. It's trying to just make the biggest impact you can have as an individual player in the sport of baseball. And Bryce Harper has been doing that basically since he signed the contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. So credit to Bryce Harper. Probably at this point, like, my all-time favorite Philly was Roy Halladay. Always has been since he pitched here. And Roy, you're in trouble, buddy. Like, Bryce Harper is probably going to be my all-time favorite Philly when everything's all said and done. And this is just another feather in the cap of a guy that has been as advertised and then some with the Philadelphia Phillies. I love bragging on Bryce Harper because, frankly, to have an all-time great, a generational talent in your city doesn't happen all that often. I'm going to enjoy every second of being able to do a podcast that covers the team that Bryce Harper plays on. So, yeah, some good stuff, some good news to end out the episode with, that we're not just talking about trading an all-star caliber third baseman and then working out payroll to sign somebody and evaluating relievers. No, we've got something bona fide good for the Philadelphia Phillies, and I feel like we needed that. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure, again, you're rating and reviewing wherever you consume this in podcast form. You're subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that helps me out, helps you out. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow we'll do more evaluations. I'm going to try and get an episode out tomorrow. I'll tell you, I do pregame for Philadelphia Eagles games, and we've got obviously Thursday night. So I may do a Friday, Saturday type of setup for episodes, but our next episode, whether it's tomorrow or Friday, will be a breakdown of the bullpen. By the way, the bullpen, I'm doing alphabetically by first name. So I'll have to look at the setup and tell you who that's going to be for tomorrow. But someone with a first name near the start of the alphabet will be our next evaluation, and this doesn't break it down by bullpen or starting pitching. I'll figure it out tomorrow. We'll do more bullpen evaluation, and it's going to be the same story. Good in the regular season. What in the world happened in the postseason? But that's an argument for the next episode of Locked On Phillies.